mental condition that limits a person. Oh, my laptop's falling. Hello everyone, I'm back. It has been so long since I posted a video, but that history of ME, those 2 videos, and a couple of outings in real life sent me into a month-long fatigue flare. But not everything hurts anymore, and I'm kind of chipper, so I'm excited to get back into it. Today, my video is about something I have already posted on my Instagram several months back. I think I posted it in Disability Pride Month, and it is about what is the difference between disability and chronic illness. If you're here and you are disabled or chronically ill, then this should help to just kind of clarify it, because often I found, especially in the beginning of my diagnosis kind of venture, the two kind of blended together. Or I considered myself chronically ill for many years but not disabled, and I found trying to figure out if I wanted to classify myself as disabled, if I even could or not, because I wasn't quite sure where the line between the two started and ended. So it should help you understand it a bit more. And if you have no idea and you're here because, well, I keep seeing these things and are they the same? It's going to help with that too. I think the first thing to do to be able to differentiate between chronic illness and disability is to give a definition of both. According to the Oxford Dictionary, they have 2 classifications for the word disability, and I'm going to read out both of them because I think the truth of it is the 2 of them combined, not one or the other. The Oxford Dictionary's definition is a physical or mental condition that limits a person's movements, senses, or activities. And then their secondary definition is a disadvantage or handicap, especially one imposed or recognised by the law. Now, I'm not going to get in this video into why handicap is not a good word to use. It has such a long history. Actually, I should make a video fully about words you shouldn't use to describe disability. Let me write that down. So in plainer English, a disability is something which impairs your body beyond that which an able-bodied person would experience. So an example of someone with a disability is someone who is deaf or hard of hearing, someone who is blind, someone with a spinal injury and has to be in a wheelchair. I am using very obvious and stereotypical versions of disability to explain it, just because I'll get into the more nuanced versions of disability when we start discussing the difference between that and chronic illness. Now, you can be disabled and not chronically ill, and you can be chronically ill and not disabled, but you can also be disabled and chronically ill. And sometimes you can be chronically ill because you're disabled, and you can be disabled because you're chronically ill. I personally am disabled because I'm chronically ill. Now, frustratingly, there is no dictionary definition for chronic illness. Some sources say that after 6 months, an illness is considered chronic. Some say a year. It's kind of, if you have an illness that lasts way longer than it should, it's a chronic illness. Some examples of chronic illnesses are asthma, diabetes, you can have chronic thyroid illnesses, you can have chronic bronchitis, you can have basically any illness you can get, from a cold to a flu to anything. There is some sort of chronic form of it. So basically, a chronic illness is an illness that lasts for a really long time. Now let's get into the difference between disability and chronic illness. So a disability is something that physically or mentally impacts you from being able to live life normally. A chronic illness is an illness that lasts for a long time. So I'm sure you can start to see where the two start to overlap. A chronic illness can cause you to have a physical or mental ailment which impairs your normal ability to function, thus meaning that you are disabled because you are chronically ill. Your chronic illnesses cause the disability. For example, I am disabled because I am chronically ill. I have chronic illnesses which cause physical and mental impairments that greatly lower my normal ability for activity. Hence, disabled because I'm chronically ill. An example of a disability without chronic illness would be, let's say, someone with a spinal injury who's in a wheelchair, who are otherwise perfectly healthy. They're healthy, they can go about their day-to-day lives with kind of a normal energy, they're not dealing with chronic infections or other chronic illness things. They are still disabled because they are unable to walk and they have to use assistive technology like a wheelchair, but other than that, they're perfectly healthy. They're living a great life. Hello. Hi. An example of a chronic illness without a disability is, say, someone who has a mild form of asthma, but it doesn't really bother them day to day. It doesn't inhibit their ability to do any activities which they would do in the day to function. Or say something like a chronic thyroid issue, if it is well managed, it can be a chronic illness without any disability. Because yes, you have the chronic illness of your thyroid, say an imbalance, an overactive or underactive thyroid, that's a problem, but if it's well managed, then it shouldn't impair your ability to live day to day and doesn't cause a disability. For example, my little kitty cat here, she is chronically ill, but she's not disabled. She has, we believe, asthma, but she still runs, jumps, eats, has fun like a normal cat. She's chronically ill, but she's not disabled because she's still a menace like always. Personally, I believe disability and chronic illness are descriptive identifiers for someone to assign to themselves to help them identify and understand and accept how they are living and explain how they are living. However, unfortunately, in a lot of circumstances, they have become legal terms. I don't think that's the right terminology, but on forms for travel insurance, health insurance, if you were trying to access any government benefits like Centrelink, disability pension, even things like student allowance, youth allowance, all of those, there are categories for disability. And there are categories for chronic illness. If you're looking to have an identity within like your illnesses, you might really want to identify as chronically ill or disabled. But it can become really tricky when you are filling in these forms and realizing, hang on, this is now a legal term. And no doctor that I've been to has been able to clearly say you are disabled or you are chronically ill. They're always very vague. I have filled in so many forms, especially before I was diagnosed, where I was scared I was committing a crime because I was saying, I am not chronically ill, I am not disabled. When technically I wasn't, because I had nothing diagnosed. I had nothing that I could tell them, this is what I have, this is why I'm ill. It is such a nuanced and personal definition that it is hard to put into these little boxes that all the forms want you to put them into. And when I was newly disabled, so when my illnesses got to a point where I wasn't able to live my life normally, and I started ticking, yes, I am disabled, or yes, I have special needs, or I need special assistance on forms, I again felt like I was taking advantage or taking things that I had no right to because I felt like I wasn't disabled enough, or I wasn't disabled officially. Identifying as disabled or chronically ill or both or one or the other or neither is a very complicated and personal process, and there are various levels of acceptance with it. Even I, who have been chronically ill for over half my life and have identified as disabled for many years, I still sometimes struggle with it. Which is all to say that if you are questioning whether you are allowed to identify as chronically ill or disabled, no one can tell you you aren't allowed. You are the only one in your body, you are the only one who knows how it affects you. Don't let some legal paperwork scare you into feeling like you can't use that word to describe yourself. I personally, it took me over 10 years to realize that I was allowed to use the term chronic pain. I had the very definition of chronic pain. I had constant pain 24/7 for over 10 years. But no doctor had ever said chronic pain. And it was like this mind-blowing revelation one day that, oh, I have the right to use this term to describe myself, because I always felt like I didn't suffer enough to have the right to use that term. You have the right to use whatever term you feel identifies you. Now, of course, there are different levels of chronic illness and there are different levels of disability, but I feel like having different levels of these things makes it even easier for people to identify with them. If you have a very minor chronic illness, you can still identify as chronically ill, and if you have a really severe chronic illness but don't feel comfortable using the word disabled, you can still identify as chronically ill. Personally, feeling comfortable using the term chronically ill and using the term disabled has completely changed the way that I both look at myself and interact with my medical professionals. Before I considered myself worthy to use those terms, I was very meek. I never stood up for myself in doctors' offices because I always felt like they were doing me a courtesy of letting me be there, of letting me be seen by the doctor. But when I came to the realization that no, I am chronically ill, I am disabled, I own these terms, this is who I am, it changed how I conducted myself. I became far more willing to stand up for myself. I became far more willing to say, no, that's incorrect. blatantly, I became comfortable saying, I want to change doctors because all this one does is Google things right in front of me. So if this video does anything, my key goal is that it helps you feel comfortable and empowered in who you are, even if you're not living in the best circumstances you could have imagined for yourself. And if this explained these definitions, which can often seem murky and are very unexplained everywhere, then that's a win too. I really hope you enjoyed this video and that it provided some form of education, something you didn't know, or if it just provided a bit of clarity by having a clearly defined definition laid out in front of you, because I know sometimes I just want a clear definition. I'm going to continue making videos as regularly as I can, more involving chronic illness and disability, but I kind of also want to branch out and do some videos that aren't just chronic illness and disability related, as while that is a big part of who I am and I'm very passionate about making videos of it, I also really want to explore my identity and who I am outside of it. So if you have any fun ideas of videos you'd like to see, I have lots of hobbies that I love going into. Also, please tell me which filming location you like more, because I changed it this week because we finally got a chest of drawers and a new chair. So I have a fancy new corner to sit in. It's just, I can literally see where I was filming before right there. So if you prefer one or the other, let me know. I hope you have a great day and a great week and are feeling happy in yourself, and I'll see you later. Everyone's gonna think I like Russian classics because I have Russian classics in the background of all my videos. I don't. They're too depressing for me. They're not. They're my fiance's.